Raymond, thanks for joining me today on this
Anytime,
podcast.
dude.
Yeah, man, you were on my list since the beginning, since we launched this podcast. So I'm glad we finally got some time together to have a chat. And before we started turning the cameras on, we were talking about where we want to start. And I know quite a bit about you, but I don't know about some of your origin story. So maybe you could tell us about that and learn more about you there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think a lot of people know me from the entrepreneur world, but before that, I was basically like right out of college. I was in government, and so I was over at NASA for about 8-9 years. I started on the shuttle program over there, and just a little scrub, helping out and doing some pretty cool missions. It was near the closeout of the program, so I got to work on some pretty cool stuff. But as time went on, I got promoted and got an opportunity to be senior engineer, lead engineer on different missions, and eventually ended up over at the International Space Station program. So I ended up doing that for a handful of years. Did rapid response, so when things really go wrong, like we might have to abandon the space station, or an astronaut, if something goes wrong, he could die or hurt himself. I was pulled in often to kind of lead that charge and make sure when shit went wrong, how do you MacGyver your way out of it?
So that was in preparation, or things did happen while you were there?
Oh man, crazy! Yeah, it was one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. Just because people weren't doing it for money, it was for the love of space. And what was really cool is if you zoom back in time, like we were approving what would become SpaceX. We were approving what would become Blue Origin, and so like those companies were in their infancy still, with 10 people, 15 people. So they were startups, and the world didn't care that much about space as much. And some people like Elon made it pretty cool as time went on. But zooming back, this is about 20 years ago. It's pretty wild of the cool stuff that we were able to do.
Was it also laying the foundations for Space Force as well?
Yeah. I mean, like Mars missions, everything. What would become of it all? But yeah, so I was there, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my future. So I'd start moving up. I'd gotten my master's degree there. Go government. They paid for everything, and did night school, all that fun stuff. So I was trying to decide the route I was going to go, and I still remember this. I'm here in Austin, and I was being guided by friends and my mentors and everything else, and they said, like you're a rising star here, and we're going to nominate you for this executive program. And so here I am getting ready to go into this executive program. It was like this really cool joint program where you get a MBA and Master of Science degree, add another Master of Science degree to my repertoire, and I'm in the pool with Bob Metcalf. And we met each other through a colleague, and I was talking to him about career paths and everything else, and he gave me this phenomenal advice, and he said, like, listen, if you're going to go down this route of your MBA program and everything else, I think it was like, it was summertime, and he said it would be really good to get like real world startup experience or real world like business experience somewhere else outside of the government. And that sat with me. And I was trying to figure out the way to blend those two together. So I'm sitting there, and I know it's like January time frame now, going forward a few months. And I wasn't sure, like I knew I was going to be starting school in August. So I had some time. I asked my work for a sabbatical. So I was considering taking some time off and figuring out everything. And this opportunity popped up to join a startup. I didn't know anything about startups. I didn't know the fundraising cycle. Again, government, money's there.
Yeah.
It's approved, billions of dollars, go do some cool stuff. It was like there was nothing holding me back at that point. So I sold my house.
Where were you living at the time?
Houston, next to Johnson Space Center.
Okay.
So I remember coming out here, selling my house on a whim, joining a startup, and it was really cool. Like there was I was one of the first employees. They quickly came in and said, "Hey, you seem to know what you're doing. Like I whiteboarded out an idea. It was funny when I came in and talked to them. They thought they were hiring like an engineer, like a software developer,
Yeah.
and I had been in more like strategy and multidisciplinary. Plus, I was an electrical engineer. I wasn't a software developer.
Yeah.
Even though I could code. So the route became like, well, what do we, what do you
So
do
what was
now?
this startup?
Anastellar.
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 Yeah.
Yeah. So
And they're based here in Austin at the time.
they were, yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, right across the street at Sixth and Congress. So yeah, it was really cool. We came in, and it was like a really fortunate situation. I look back, and we had a smart team. We had kind of all the cores. The person that started the company really kind of knew how to find each individual pieces. Years have gone by, and I kind of respect the fact that he knew like the different pieces to the puzzle he needed to put together. And so I was essentially like had a product, and we had like great engineers. And,
What were they making then?
it was a fintech product. But that was
Okay.
the funny thing is I remember coming in and I asked them the same question. I said, what are you doing? They said, it was almost like a Seinfeld episode. Like, what do you think we're doing? And we sat out and defined the product. And it was the wildest thing because startup world, like it was true vaporware in the beginning. Like we're out at South by, we're promoting it. We're sending people to a website. And I had just been hired like a month prior, and the product isn't even out. It doesn't work. There's no demo, right? It's all like, it's website. It's an idea and a website.
The definition of vaporware, basically. Yeah.
And, and then we start winning awards at South by. And it was like, in my head, I'm like, we don't have a working product. And, but we then like a month later we did. And, we started getting big partnerships like Lyft, the rideshare company, and Upwork and all these other ones.
So do you think that like kind of acting like you had something was the right move then? Because it built that momentum to get those partnerships rather than starting cold.
I think there's always 10 ways to the top of the mountain. Mm-hmm. That's not how I like to do things.
Yeah.
I learned the way that they did it, and then I learned the way that other people have done it, and I kind of found my own path. But I like to have the proof in the pudding before I even go out and talk to people. I like to have a full working demo. But that one ended up being successful. Like within about 6 months of the formation of the company, LOI comes in, we're getting acquired by Goldman Sachs. And
Crazy.
within a year of the South by one, and this is like wild. And I give credit back to the CEO of that company, like what he was able to do. He's on stage with like President Obama making the announcement that like the company was acquired in the Goldman Sachs, and it was this like big thing, and we're meeting all these interesting celebrities. And
How long have they been going at that point?
Huh?
They hadn't been going that long then.
now it was a year from the South by party, and it was, and what was the really crazy thing is there was this guy that was brought in for the acquisition, really, really smart gentleman. And he basically, his strategy was like, stop building. Like, don't build anymore because you don't want to expose extra risk. So like we had all these patents, and like my expertise was like building cool technology, coming up with really cool ideas. And so like when we got acquired in the Goldman, within even 6 months, we had like a few hundred pages of patents, and like 4 ended up getting issued. So I searched my name and the word Goldman Sachs online, and it pulls up all these patents and ideas that like, what's really funny is even to today, Goldman is still pulling from those ideas years later. This is like 8 years later, 9 years later, and they're still like.
I was going to ask the timescale because I was trying to figure it out, because they were the glory days of South by Southwest as well, when companies were pitching and announcing that they've sold within 12 months of creating the company for fantastical amounts of money.
Yeah.
And now where we are today is very different. We've been riding that wave for a while.
Ebb and flows, man. It's
Yeah.
like, you go through, I ended up having my success later on I did that startup, then I did a aerospace startup afterwards, and we ended up being like, I think it was the third or fourth largest crowdfunding, like when crowdfunding had just started in the United States, and then I think like the 17th globally. So we did an aerospace platform. I joined there as essentially employee 2, the COO into the company. So like moving from product, now getting operational experience after spending 2 years at Goldman in a leadership role. And so that was like a cool thing, and did that at South by. We did this like wild event, like where we actually brought a launch platform, a rocket into South by, and dealing with the craziness of like getting it approved right at 4th and Trinity. And then I wound out of that company and was doing my social media platform, Ibble.
So that was a successful endeavor for you, the aerospace one.
Yeah, I mean, it's still going on. I think they just actually made an announcement recently that they're going to IPO, but it was cool. It's like for myself in a leadership role, in a C-suite role, we took that company from $0 on paper, and when I left the company, our last valuation with a fundraise was $108 million, and now it's worth more, hundreds.
Well, it's going to IPO,
and so it's kind of cool, like watching that journey of like taking something from an idea to something else. I mean, my mom actually said something the other day, because then we go out, we do Ibble, and it becomes like a pretty big success. I mean, like we're going against the competitors like TikTok and Facebook, Twitter, and trying to go against the grain, build it all here in Texas, and also different thesis, not a copycat platform. Raised the largest seed round in Texas, $12.7 million seed at the time. And my mom said recently, she's like, you know what I was most proud about? And I'm like, what? Like, I've done some cool companies and stuff like that. She's like, the fact that just off of your ideas, you've been able to support yourself and provide support for now blending all the companies, like over 100 people. Like, you've given people jobs and careers, and they've gone out and done bigger and badder things. And I think like it's one of the wisest things a person's told me, where it's actually like one of my proudest moments right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that most people don't talk about with entrepreneurship. But that's what you're really doing, is you're creating these jobs and you're making money off your ideas. It's kind of crazy, really. Like, that thing didn't exist 5 minutes ago, and now you've convinced people to give you some money so you can do it full time. Yep. I love it. So you kind of created your own kind of like PayPal Mafia. Are you familiar with that term, the PayPal Mafia? Yeah. There's all the people that were obviously in the PayPal team that went on to do bigger and better and greater things. A lot of them
are here in town.
They are, yeah, they are. And it's funny that, we've got your own mafia of people out there. So there's a lot of people that you've worked with gone on to build bigger and better things, you said.
Yeah, it's actually been kind of cool, like watching them going off to other companies. But we have, between our group of friends, we have our group that we kind of consider the same thing, where all of us are entrepreneurs, and like, I'm sure they're going to be watching this, but like, my friend John, who just sold and repurchased and resold his company and has been a really prolific investor, and Amber, who's built an existence from events for years and years, and Jordan, who is the chief medical officer or whatever the equivalent is there at Neuralink. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like we just have this like really cool group of friends that have done amazing things, and it's kind of cool. Like, looking back, I think in 10 years hopefully we'll be like a defining group of people. But there's almost no crisscross between all the work that each one of us do. It's like we have I made a joke a long time ago and said we're the Mars astronaut crew, because we have like the communicator, the pilot, the scientist, the medical officer, so on and so on.
Yeah,
that's kind of funny.
Well, hopefully you can all make it back.
Yeah, right.
So I think we met around the time that you were raising that round for Ibble and forming Ibble, and we actually met at a dinner. What would you call it? Events company type thing, didn't we? We would go out to dinner events together. Yep. And I was fascinated by what you were doing at Ibble. And I thought you were kind of crazy because you were building a social media app when it seemingly that ship has sailed for who's going to like plant their flag in the ground. Yep. And so, meaning the Facebooks, the Instagrams and things like that. But there was a few other contenders that popped up around that time, like Clubhouse.
Yep.
Who was another one around that time? I mean, Clubhouse springs to mind.
Be Real, I mean, has come recently. I mean, there's so many like that come and go. The problem is the ones that come and go are usually they're more of a feature instead of a product.
And don't know when to bow out. Was that like Meerkat? Was one of them, wasn't it? It was like that.
Yeah.
And Clubhouse, I think, was probably that.
Yeah.
Maybe as well. I don't know how they're doing.
Yeah.
But
Still
Ibble
around.
is still strong. And I actually, I want to touch on like a bit of the story of Ibble and what's happened.
Sure.
Because like, I think, correct me if I'm getting my timescales wrong, because like you were meant to like launch at South by, but then that was right when COVID hit, wasn't it?
Yeah, man. It was so we were building it for quite a bit of time, and platforms coming out. 2019, we go to South by, and we were finalists in the pitch competition. We're still building. We're still.
Do you think
figuring
that's worth doing still, the South by pitch competition?
What was the question?
I said, do you still think it's worth doing
Oh,
today? Is this the pitch competition at South by?
I think any exposure to a crowd, right? Like you still have VCs, you still have angel investors in the crowd, but validating your idea out to someone, I mean, why not? Like I always think an entrepreneur should always be pitching.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we
Sorry,
did it 2019. There was some good success coming out of there. We won this like Google Grant Award where we got like 100,000 from them, but like we're still essentially self-funding the company from my 401k and my savings. And yeah, and I still remember this like it's yesterday. So we're approaching 2020, and we closed from this amazing VC down in Atlanta, TTV Capital. And I'll always be loyal to those guys because how good they were to me. We started off as actually a fintech platform. And one thing I was trying to do differently is I think it's easier to learn from your peers instead of learning from a teacher or an expert. Because otherwise you're hearing the same boring story over and over again. So we were trying to do it from like the lens of like, let's make financial education fun and exciting. And so when we started exposing ourselves to more social features, we realized that people want to talk about anything, not just finance. So
I thought you were going to say anything but finance.
well, no, I mean, it was a little bit of everything, but like people were talking about privately traded companies and the future of them and stuff like that. So a lot of speculation and the tech that was behind it. So it was really interesting, and I was loving where it was going. So we had just gone through due diligence. We're finally getting a fundraise. So I'm like, yay, this is my first one as a CEO, raising around $2 million coming in. And I had to go to them, and at the last minute, I'm like, hey guys, I actually don't know if we're a fintech platform. I think we're actually a social media platform. And like that was like a ballsy move because we're running out of cash. I'm burning down all my 401k, all my stock, the money that I had earned from Goldman, everything, right? That put this together, that money I made from Hypersciences. And then all of a sudden, all of a sudden they're like, you know what? We believe in the founder.
That's what they should be.
And go do what you want to go and do. And so we closed the round and rapidly, and this is right around November. So
Of what, 2022?
2019.
2019.
Yeah, and so we start going like crazy, and we have this vision that, I mean, we were building at a crazy pace back then. And so, and I get on the phone and I send a message. We first get connected to Hennessy, and I want to do something at South by because the year before we did something at 2019 we did the aerospace event at South by.
Oh, right.
So I want to continue that journey, and 2020 is coming around, and I take a ballsy move and I email like leadership at LVMH, and that owns Hennessy and richest man in the world at the time. And they agree to start engaging their whole ecosystem. So we had this amazing site at South by 4th and Trinity right in front of the convention center. We had so much traffic. We convinced them to start coming in. So now they're tagging in their brands. You know, they have Tiffany and Co.
This is 2019 you did this?
This is coming now for South by 2020.
Yeah, because there was, because I wanted to just get my timelines right. Because like you, I saw your event, year before last.
Yeah,
that
the
you did.
2022 one.
But was that one deferred? That was a deferred.
Yeah.
Were you okay? So you did the one you're talking about right now, and then you would go, let's do it again. Let's double down.
Yeah,
and
well,
that
we
was where-
did the aerospace one for Hypersciences
Yeah.
for my company in 2019. Then that's when I peeled off. I was focusing on Ibble. Backside of 2019, we raised money, and we're gonna now do 2020. And what happened?
That's what you're planning to do.
Yeah.
Well,
And COVID.
it was COVID here, and I actually remember it vividly because I just moved to Austin the year before, and I'd moved literally the week of South by, and I was like hazily walking through Austin, going,
Yeah.
"What the hell is this?" Like,
crazy, right?
I got pulled over by a cop because I was in the wrong lane and stuff like this because I was just literally fresh off the boat, and I was like, "This is wicked." And then the next year, I'm more settled. I'm ready to like get in the mix. And the first thing in Austin that was announced to sort of close down or not happen was South by.
It was like
the first thing that really we all went, "Oh crap."
it was a few days before South by. We're calling up South by and asking them like, "Is this happening? Is this happening?" And then all of a sudden they say, "It's happening. It's happening." So I felt so bad for LVMH because they had built a whole exhibit in France and were sharing the event space and doing this really, really cool thing. They were going to announce a new alcohol brand that was coming out. And, so I think South by was still under the assumption that they were going to happen. And sure enough, it doesn't, right? And so we had just closed money, but we had spent a good amount of money as only a $2 million in the account kind of a company to build this, let's launch, let's get off the ground, right? And then it doesn't, right? So
And we were in a similar spot to you in a way. Like we raised 1.3 million around that time, and we got a confirmation that we were going to get our first check that was going to kick off the round, and then it didn't. Then a week went by, 2 weeks, and they're like, no, it's still happening.
Yeah.
But like because of the way this pandemic's been unfolding, like we're like, it's just taken a second. So you're like, oh dear, and it did come in. But the rest of the money we raised was completely online.
Yeah.
Like we didn't meet another investor after that. And we raised that 1.3. But it was just a crazy time where things weren't really happening.
Yeah.
No one knew what to do. So we were like doing a sales call one time. The person says, "Are you crazy? Do you not know how the world is?" I'm like, "Yeah, we still need to sell and operate business."
Yeah.
Everyone basically kind of closed down, even if they didn't kind of need to.
Yeah. So 2020, we're still jamming away. Growing the platform, we're doubling down, we're talking to users, we're figuring out what their need is. And this is kind of where Ibble found who we were. We realized that online communities and face-to-face human interaction was really important. And so we were trying to figure out a way of like YouTube, TikTok, all them are more broadcast mode. What I feel like it, for the older folks that might be listening to this, is when, in the 90s, there was 1,000 channels on the TV. And so we would be sitting there with a remote control in front of us, touching and going between the channels and like spend 30 seconds per channel. You had 1,000 other options. So you're going to the next one, next one, next one, next one. And that's what it feels like on TikTok. And a lot of these other platforms is you're just constantly moving through your short form, you're barely consuming, and then you're on to the next thing, but there's no human interaction back and forth. So we said, what if we could create a way that allowed bi-directional conversations between a group of people? So we cultivated that in 2020. 2021, we go out there, we start getting a lot of interest. We start getting celebrities starting using the platform. 2021, that's when we went out and raised the $12.7 million round. And then in 2022, which I think that's when you came by the event, is we did this like phenomenal event at South by that we didn't know this until later, but it was the most walked site at South by during 2022. And if we go back and look at the analytics, because our analytic was screwed up back then, we actually had more engagement that weekend than when Twitter had launched at South by years prior. And so like we were on this amazing trajectory, but that's when we hit the first, snafu of, okay, the platform at that point wasn't ready for the scale that we were having. Mm-hmm. And we were building so quick that we were picking up a lot of tech debt. So we spent the backside of 2022, refactoring things and getting it really cut down and figuring out who we were, what we were from that audience. Got super excited, and back to your example of like years prior, where you were mentioning in 2020, you raised some money and things got bad. So we raised that big $12.7 million round, and we're going out and we're starting to get inbound from massive investors. I mean, setting the largest seed round in Texas, like we're probably going on to a unicorn valuation in the next round. And so trying to be the good CEO that I'm sitting there balancing out, should we take debt? Should we take bridge? Should we take, how do we not dilute our investors? And we made some decisions that, looking back in hindsight, probably weren't the best decisions, but we thought we could take a healthy bridge. Mm-hmm. I mean, based upon the traction and everything. And sure enough, some of the banks that we secured our bridge through were the ones that went under in 2023. Yep. And so we ended up in a kind of a crunch situation.
And there was a funny situation at that time with the investment market as well. Generally, there's a lot of investors I found who would still take calls and still be sniffing around, but weren't pulling the trigger. Yeah. And then when they did, they were looking for no-brainers or distressed A-round people.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty wild, but it worked out well for us because we sat there, and I think it was one of my mentors kind of. He's given me advice over the years, and he said, the great thing about an entrepreneur is how you get off the ground. You're going to get knocked down every moment, but it really is how you pick yourself back up, and that you just keep on moving and walking with the punches. And we got our ass beat with all that, and so we were in a hard situation. We weren't sure, should we shut it down? Should we move forward? And then a miraculous thing started happening. Users started just organically coming to the platform. I kept everything alive on my credit cards.
Was that do you think that was because of the momentum that you'd already built, and it just took that second to start kicking in?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've heard this from a lot of people recently, that we were just ahead of the game of like what the industry was going to want. And we're starting to see this now where, I think some of the platforms are making some poor decisions of what's happening. I mean, TikTok's essentially become a home shopping network. It's like every third video is someone trying to sell you something.
Yeah.
And the users are getting pretty pissed off pretty quickly because nobody wants to be sold to every moment of every day.
Yeah.
And so people are leaving that platform for that, or they want to build
human connections. It's feeling quite disingenuous as well, generally. Like, I feel like just the way that people talk to you, you won't believe that the thing I did this week. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, it was interesting because TikTok, and I know I'm centering in on them quite a bit, but they started off with this okay, so we're going to be like lip syncing, dancing. Then they went like hypersexual on the platform.
Yeah.
Then it went to like education, which I thought was really cool, but there was no bi-directional education, like let's talk about it kind of thing. And then now it's become this like facade of I'm going to do stuff just to pull in the audience and then sell to them. And it's like, I understand that in the creator economy, you have to make a living, but I think there's better ways to go into it.
Yeah, I got a comment the other day on TikTok, and it said, another guy trying to sell his course. I'm like, I don't sell a course. I just like talking about this stuff and like talking to people about this stuff.
Except if you want to pay $90.
Except only $99. No, I don't sell a course. Yeah. But people just assume it. Yeah. I don't blame him, even for that. It's kind of like, they're almost programmed to think, oh, what's this person going to sell me? And that's not a good place to be in the social media space, that we all feel like that as consumers, that we feel that way. Yeah. So you kept this thing alive with your credit cards, which is pretty ballsy.
Yeah, it was
You mean the servers and stuff and the staff, the base staff or whatever.
Yeah, and so, I paid for the staff as long as I could. And then when we did it, it was pretty cool. A lot of them said that they wanted to stick with me and stick with the journey, but I understood they needed to get a paycheck. I mean, during that whole craziness. And so we, like I said, miraculous thing happened. The platform started picking up traction again. And we started getting inbounds from folks that are saying, this is something that we want. Now, in parallel, what we had done was we started thinking of other ways to kind of like utilize the technology and use it either as like white label applications and stuff like that.
Last time you really talked, that was maybe some of the areas you were looking at, because it's a
Yeah.
powerful platform to do that kind of thing with.
Great for events. I mean, like what we did at South by is like a perfect example. Like we
Yeah.
had 10,000, within 3 days, we had 10,000 video conversations, 1.3 million people hit the app or hit the website. Just tons of people want to talk. I mean, there were celebrities all over the app, and people were really enjoying it as like a way to connect with fans and really hear from them. So that was fun. And then, that's the cool thing. It's like, we kept on moving with the punches. We kept on expanding it, growing it, and it's still there. It's never gone away, and now we're growing it again. We have a big release coming out for South by this year. I always try
Okay.
to anchor everything back to South by.
Yeah,
and
I like that.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's like more and more major celebrities are like, "This is what we've been looking for," and I'm like, God, it's something that another mentor of mine told me a long time ago. It's like, you should never build like, you never want to invest when your cab driver tells you to invest, and you never want to like build what is hot in the moment. You want to try to predict like a few years out. I think the problem was we predicted like 2-3 years out instead of like a year out, and so it took some time for the audience to catch up to it. But that means that our tech stack is just like freaking
Legit.
incredible. Yeah.
So like this new release in South by in March, is there some new features or functionality, or is it kind of the relaunch of Airball in a way?
You know, probably the coolest thing that we got was coming off of South by 2022. What we heard was when creators were coming to the platform, and this is the same problem they were having on TikTok, Instagram, other places. They were like, okay, so I'm making you smile, I'm making you happy, and I'm educating you. What's in it for me? How am I going to make money? And we interviewed a whole bunch of them and asked them like, what is it that they wanted to get out of it? Like, what is the advantage to them? And what they came back and said is, like, we want more creator economy based stuff. We want more subscription services. We want a place to like build community, cultivate it, and then we can sell sponsorships inside the community. We can do giveaways. We can do all this other stuff. And so, on the backside of before the banks were going under, but also after, we just kept on thinking through into this new that we were putting together, Violet, like how could we reimagine all those insights? And we built them. And so we built essentially like next generation subscription and creator economy world.
Yeah.
That like if you wanted to, for example, have like an entrepreneur community that you want to charge $10 to, but instead of it just you putting content out there like Patreon, you could have active conversations with the group that are asynchronous. You can do trivia, you can do giveaways, you can do whatever you want that sits inside those communities. And now it gives you an opportunity to make money if that's something that you wanted to go and do.
Yeah, because that was something that Twitter, X have started to try and improve, is make sure that people creating good content that's getting good traction, getting paid.
Yeah.
I was trying to think as you were talking, like what that app was called before TikTok that didn't do that.
Yeah.
And what was it called? Why am I forgetting it? Vine.
Yeah.
Thank you. Vine. It's sad that we don't remember it, but like the name of it. But Vine didn't do that, and that's why it failed. And obviously with TikTok and Instagram, they got so much momentum, and there is people getting somewhat payouts. And I've heard people who use Instagram, Chris, who just helped me with the Vine name, stopped making money through Instagram, through the algorithm changes, because they think they can just let people generate that content for free, and they'll stay on the platform, and they've got that competitive advantage. But it sounds like that your model isn't going to be so much, we're going to be paying people based on like to help pay, paid by advertisers, but like they can create a community which they can then monetize in a nice way. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, because they can use it however they want. Like, so we've had in one of our use cases, we had this like amazing group, and they went in there and they were doing like morning daily affirmations, ideas to think about throughout the day, like nightly sessions, like relationship building at the end of the week, and they were able to charge a subscription fee for something like that. We've had some other folks that like have used it for like almost like group therapy, and so they can throw all their patients and group into a common group therapy. So it's not just the individual interacting, but it's also an always-on community.
So like with, excuse me, Patreon, you have to kind of have your following and then encourage your following to meet you there for exclusive content. But what you guys, I guess, are sort of proposing is that there is already a hungry set of people there who are wanting to learn and interact, and you might pick them up and bring them into your paid community also.
Yeah, so that's the, Patreon is, like you're saying, you have to
it's an island.
You have to shovel them there. But what we have is I saw this past week, like some person has a farm and they've created like my pig farm community, and they're just posting their content there. And then we have a tarot card reader one that I just saw the other day. And so like you can have free communities. And so you also don't have to post it in a community. You can post it in like the overall hierarchy structure. And so there's this nice discoverability mode that feels like TikTok where you can swipe through. The big differentiator is now you can dig in and swipe in. So having active participations of that content. Mm-hmm. And so we always kind of like laughed. It's like TikTok was very like single directional, swipe up, and we're swipe up and then in. And so it's kind of like opening up a new world. And the interesting thing is it's not far enough away that we're not trying to like reinvent a whole new thing. It's already logical that should have been the next step. And so it's like an evolution of what everything's happened. Because if we go back and like look at like what TikTok is, feels a lot like Vine, which has been around a long time.
Yeah.
What is, Twitter really hasn't changed.
No.
And Facebook really hasn't changed. And so our way of looking at things was, how do we reimagine where social media was and where it should be heading?
Because Instagram implemented a lot more videos and that to kind of combat TikTok, I find.
Yeah,
Instagram was just pictures for a long time, and now it's primarily videos
and stories. But anything that ends up in Meta, they happen to, what's the famous story that Mark said is when they were talking to Snapchat, which essentially was stories.
Yeah,
they're like, well, we'll just steal the feature. Or just take the feature.
Yeah, that's what they do.
So that's what stories became. And then like TikTok started doing well, so then they made Reels. It's like, come on, guys, have some innovation. We had that problem with some of the social media platforms that we would release a feature, and then like 3 months later, 4 months later, they would be beta testing the exact feature.
I think you told me you felt like there was some people from Meta or whatever who were looking into what you guys are doing very closely.
Yeah, we were told that like it was we were told that when you have a company that big, it's easy to throw an analyst on something else. How long did it take that like they basically sucked all the air out of the room with Be Real? Because like Be Real had a very simple like feature, and then all of a sudden it ended up on Instagram for a small amount of time. So yeah, it's just the direction you want to go. And then the other thing we're focused on is we started with the social media platform, Evil. We've expanded it. Mm-hmm. We're focusing on a new thesis instead of just a conversation platform, now more community-centric, subscription-based idea. And then we also have this ability to do white label communities. So like if you're an event, if you're a Comic-Con, if you're a Formula One, if you're the NBA or the NFL, and you want a place that like all those dedicated fans are talking about something. So let's think about like Barstool Sports, right?
Yeah.
All these fans are talking, and they're sending everybody to Discord. They're sending everybody to Reddit. And so they don't own those communities. They don't own those communities. They don't own the advertisements that come in, and they don't own the monetization that sits behind it or the analytics. And so what we said is like, what if we could go and create like this white label solution that any major brand, if they're throwing in an event like a Comic-Con, a South by Southwest, CES, they now have a place that they can own. Or if they want to have an always-on community like Barstool Sports or the NFL or Formula One, that you want to have those community-centric and focused. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like our enterprise feature through our company called Violet. The hierarchy is like Violet is like our alphabet, and then our YouTube is IBL. So like that hierarchy of stuff.
And like for the smaller creators, to back to your point that you said about if your cab driver is telling you to invest in something, it's probably too late.
Yep.
But right now, for smaller creators to get into this platform and start kind of growing with it, it's probably this is the time. This is the gold rush
Yep.
to get in and get your community in there and start building one.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts somewhere, right? Like we've watched. That's the cool thing about the creator economy. It doesn't take long to take off. The big thing is like, do you have a differentiator? And we've seen this happen where there was, people that were early on TikTok and they became TikTok celebrities.
Same with Vine. Some of them were able to transfer to TikTok, and
some of them, right? And like some of them were able to see that there's more out there. I mean, a great example would be like a Logan Paul, right? Started on Vine, did dumb videos, and then all of a sudden now he's a pretty amazing podcaster.
Yeah.
And there's some recent ones that started with their stuff and they're more than it. But there's a lot that, they get their success through saying 4 words or doing a move or doing a dance on TikTok. And, they're a celebrity on Monday, and by Friday they're not anymore. And so that 15 minutes of fame runs out pretty quick. So we're trying to not be the place that like, hey, if you want to subscribe to a person and watch them dance, it's like, we're not the platform for that. But if you're trying to go like further in depth with stuff and like actually, learn, educate, build human connection, we're the place.
Well, it sounds like the magic number of the 18 to 30-year-olds like market are going to spend more time there than watching silly dances.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Man, thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed learning more about it, and I think I'm excited about South by Southwest and the new launch of Ibble.
I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Cheers.